So they're saying Charlie Kirk's killer has been caught. Now, do y'all believe that? Tyler Robinson, 22 years old, he writes messages on the bullets and cartridges, and the FBI didn't catch him. So supposedly this kid, well, I'm not gonna call him a kid, he's 22 years old. His dad was a retired police chief, and his dad recognized him, and his dad turns him in and gets the priest to get a confession out this kid. Wait until they deep dive into that. Wait until the videos come out on who these people actually are. Man, there's no way any kid that's 22, and I keep saying kid, but young adult, 22, wants to throw their life away for Charlie Kirk. Stop it. This isn't some, any 22-year-old I know don't care about none of that. They trying to make money. There's a housing crisis. There's a bunch of debt going on. A lot of 22-year-olds I know, or I'm gonna say between 18 and 25, they're either in college getting in a bunch of debt, or they're saying forget college. They're door dashing. They're running up credit card debt, trying to live out their retirement years now because they know they'll never afford a house because housing is $800,000. These jobs ain't paying. The wages don't match the cost of living. They're not trying to assassinate Charlie Kirk. So when it comes out that this guy is some, agent, or their parents have some kind of allegiance to a certain country, or CIA, 3-letter agencies, that's what's going to happen. I still don't get, kind of why they assassinated Charlie Kirk, but hearing the rumors and some of these deep dive video breakdowns, the theory goes that when Charlie Kirk first came out, Charlie Kirk, he was pro-Israel. He was one of those people that couldn't separate the government, or should I say the Israeli government, versus the Holy Land Israel. They were all one and the same. And even I sort of thought that. When you live in America and you're not really doing your research, you're always pro-Israel because if you're a Christian, you think about Israel and you just think, that's the Holy Land, blah blah blah. The two are one and the same, but it's not one and the same. So Charlie Kirk was getting backed by Israel. Let me say this, he was getting backed by the Israeli government. Now, Charlie Kirk is definitely America first and a Christian. So, Charlie Kirk in the last year, I want to say even some in sort of started in 2023. Charlie Kirk started to flip-flop. So basically, what happened was a political version of ran off on the plug. That's pretty much that happened. You know, the Israeli government gave Charlie Kirk a lot of money. And all of a sudden, he's starting to drift and bite the hand that feeds him without really biting down on the hand. You know, he started to say little stuff here and there. And they knew if Charlie Kirk, you know, kept going harder and harder and harder and more criticizing Israel, that would be bad. So that's, you know, theory number one. And, you know, theory number two would be, you know, he got killed by some LGBT transgender, you know, person. Well, like I said, I don't know anyone, you know, that is a trained sniper that has, you know, blue hair and go by they, them, zer. Like, those two don't match, you know. Usually they don't like guns. You know, they don't want nobody to have a gun. You know, it's just not, it doesn't fit their profile. Now, like I said, what I originally thought, and this makes more sense, was that Charlie Kirk was doing the, you know, prove me wrong thing, you know, and it was on a campus, maybe 20, 30 people, and a crazy person got mad at a question or something and just pulled out a handgun and shot him like that. You know, now, I think blue-haired Patsy or whatever, you know, crazy person would have done that. But like I say, this was like a trained person, you know, that doesn't even look like he fits that narrative of discipline to even pull off this shot. From, you know, 200 yards away, you know, you had to have training. You know, you had to at least prepare for this shot at least a month in advance. And you need almost a month in advance and already be shooting to sort of pull this off. That doesn't fit a LGBT person. Not saying an LGBT person can't love shooting, it just doesn't match up. You know, so, you know, do I believe this guy was the guy that took out Charlie Kirk? I highly doubt it. Why would a police chief turn in his son? Like, man, it's all one big scheme. That's all it is. It's, you know, this guy's probably gonna go down and then probably get released. You know, go look at that OKC bombing. You know, Timothy McVeigh. If you deep dive into that, you know, you'll see where, you know, he gets arrested and all that. But then after he's been in prison and all that, hey, they got videos of him, you know, on a military helicopter, you know, doing some work in like a training video or something like that. So, will he go down? You know, he's going to go down. They're going to play it in the media. They're going to have a trial. You know, the stage is going to be set. And then, you know, once that's over with, I think this guy is going to be out. You know, he's probably going to have a high position in the military or some 3-letter agency. I do not believe, and maybe it was him, but I think this was a sanctioned hit. That's all I'm saying. I think this was a sanctioned hit. This is some burn notice, you know, type CIA stuff. And, you know, Charlie, you know, looking at his past videos, he was pro-Israel. So that's pretty much what happened. Dude took that bag and started drifting for the other team. He started criticizing him. I mean, that's what he signed up for. You know, maybe he didn't think it was going to be that serious that he could, you know, criticize them a little bit and, you know, maybe live, but nah, he signed up for that. You know, I'm not saying, you know, he should have died or nothing like that. You know, no one should die. I mean, they could just cut off. You know, hey, look, we're going to cut you off. We're going to sue you. You know, we're going to expose you for taking out money. You know, but very funny how first thing that happens, Benjamin Netanyahu said, hey, Charlie Kirk, you know, he died, but he wrote this letter to me saying he loves me and loves Israel. He's pro-Israel. The same people that killed him want to kill us and bring him to, basically bring his supporters back to Israel, the government of Israel, you know, not necessarily the Holy Land stuff. But hey, if you're confused, pretty much in a nutshell, Charlie Kirk tried to run off with that bag and, you know, not do his return. So peace.